Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Through. Yeah. Welcome to tonight's show. This is our 11th memorial concert. Yeah, 11. Should have been 12, but of course last year we had to postpone the concert because of the deep snow. And we've changed our venue this year because there's a wedding function in the Memorial Hall. But it's good that facilities are available both in the hall and here in the club. And local folk need to use them to their full, because once gone, gone for good. We are running the event as a folk cabaret style, so I do ask people to try and be as quiet as possible, collecting as many drinks at the bar as they can afford and carry.
For us.
And for them, yeah. And remind you that the toilets are at the back of the hall. When the main concert is over, we hope to have an informal sing-along to allow the many talented members of the audience to participate in some local songs and hopefully all have a jolly good time. So much so that they would want to do it again. 1862, January 16th, was the day that the tragic events began. There was a long, long period of rescue attempts and recovery of the bodies of the entombed miners. At last, the gigantic funeral cortege, stretching all the way from New Hartley for the service at Erston Church, capped a doom-laden month for the people of the village. So long ago. The history of health and safety in the UK was radically improved by the passing of the Twin Shaft Bill in Parliament, all because of what happened here. The mine was reopened and closed eventually in the 1960s, survived by many local pits whose destiny was finally sealed in the closure programme, whose contents have now been fully revealed at the end of the 30-year document rule. The lives of people down the ages are entwined, and the contribution, both ancient and modern, from our guests tonight will, I'm sure, help to both reflect upon the lessons from the here and now and celebrate the community and lives of people who once lived below the ground on which we tread. And now to get things underway, please welcome BEESWING, Christine, Dave, Fraser and Keith, who began and kept the event successfully running for 12 years. BEESWING.
Well, good evening, everybody. We're here to remember the families affected by the terrible events which occurred in 1862. Those people were just like us, and the men and boys who died were the same as you'd find in any community around the world. There were among them dreamers and doers, lovers and fighters, poets and artists. But they were not like us in that because they had no choices. They had no choice but to go down that deep, dark hole from when they were tiny little children and work out their lives there in great danger. There were no laws to protect them and no union to fight for them. Our first song, which Fraser's going to sing on his own, is School Day's Over.
School day's over, come on then, John. Time you were getting your pit boots on. On with your sock and your moleskin trousers, time you were on your way. Time you were learning the pitman's job, earning a pitman's pay. Come on then, Jim, it's time to go. Time you were heading down below. Time you were handling a pick and shovel, you start at the pit today. Time you were learning the collier's job, earning a collier's pay. Come on and die, it's nearly light. Time you're off to the anthracite. Morning mist is on the valley, time you were on your way. Time you were learning the miner's job, earning a miner's pay. School days over, come on and join. Time you were getting your pit boots on. On with your sock and your moleskin trousers, time you were on your way. Time you were learning the pitman's job, earning a pitman's pay. School days over.
They set off that freezing cold morning to go to work, saying goodbye to the family as usual, and with no idea that this day was to be their last. We're going to give you one of our favourites now, a Johnny Handel song called Going to the Mine.
Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line, past the dodgy tanky engine, going to the mine. Rows of pit folks' houses, like regiments in line, taste the gritty daylight when you go into the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line, past the dodgy tanky engine, going to the mine. Whistle of the buzzer, it's time to rise and shine. How I long for Sunday when you go into the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line, past the dodgy tanky engine, going to the mine. Falling snow around us, turning into grime, down the coaly trackway when you go into the mine. Flying birds and freedom, but I must serve me time. So one day I'll be flying too, from going to the mine. Into the smoky morning, and trudging down the line. Past the dirty, tanky engine, going to the mine. Falling down the shaft, leaving the sun behind. Born to be a human mole, going to the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line. Past the dirty, tanky engine, going to the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line. How I long for Sunday, when you're going to the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line. One day I'll be flying through, from going to the mine. Into the smoky morning, I'm trudging down the line. Past the dirty, tanky engine, going to the mine.
They started work just like normal, and the rhythm of their work took over. They cut the coal, they powered factories and warmed homes. The work was essential, but they were not safe. Dave's going to sing I Could Hew.
When I was young and in me prime, yeah, I could hew. Way I was hewing all the time. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through. I've lain down flat now, shovel coal. Hey, I could hew. Me eyes is smart in a dust-filled hole. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through. I've walked with Maras and they were men. Hey, I could hew. They were men, iron sons of men. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through. It's soon me mare that pit of sea. Hey, I could hew, but carry round I inside of me. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through. Another walk was made by men. Hey, I could hew. We made dust I'll never ken. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through. When I was young and in me prime, hey, I could hew. Way I was hewing all the time. Now me hewing days are through. Now me hewing days are through.
His humid days.
Their families were at home, as always, waiting for the sound of their boots on the cobbles which signified that their men were safe. But that day, the sound never came. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up close. The bairns will I'll miss you, but I'll miss you most. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up tight. I'll put me arms round you and kiss you good night. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up close. The bairns will I'll miss you, but I'll miss you most. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up tight. I'll put me arms round you and kiss you good night. Hi, Geordie, do ye mind the day we were wed? The ale that was drunk and the tears that were shed. Me own bonny pit lad, so fine and so young, before all that coal dust clogged up your lungs. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up close. The bairns will I'll miss you, but I'll miss you most. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up tight. I'll put me arms round you and kiss you good night. Hi, Geordie, thought Martha, as she held his frail frame. How many more lads will that doughty pit claim? How many more pit lads digging for coal are gonna pay with their lives or they'll pay with their souls?
Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up close.
The
Bairns will I'll miss you, but I'll miss you most. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up tight. I'll put me arms round you and kiss you good night.
Geordie heard Martha as she gave a sigh. She was holding back tears as they brimmed in her eyes. She thought of the happy years and how they had fled as the moon cast long shadows on that grinding hit head. So why must a man walk down that black hole? Why must he breathe lungs full of dust from the coal? So shovel your coal on, but take time to pray for the man who walks where there's nae night or day. Think about Martha and her little bairns. Spare a thought for Geordie, how he met his end. Think about Hartley, the miners who died, and tell me, do you still like your flickering fireside?
Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up close. The bairns will I'll miss you, and I'll miss you most. Away, son, oh Geordie, come cuddle up tight. I'll put me arms round you and kiss you good night.
Martha held Geordie close to her breast. Geordie, he struggled for his final breath. Geordie passed on, and she held him tight. Then, for the very last time, Martha kissed him good night. So those men and boys and their families, they'll never be forgotten. And our final song gives us some hope Fraser's going to lead us in Only Remembered. Please join in.
Fading away like the stars in the morning, losing their light in the glorious sun. Thus shall we pass from this earth and its toiling, only remembered for what we have done. Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. Thus shall we pass from this earth and its toiling, only remembered for what we have done. Only the truth that in life we have spoken, only the seeds that in life we have sown, these shall pass onward when we are forgotten, only remembered for what we have done. Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. These shall pass onward when we are forgotten, only remembered for what we have done. Who'll sing the anthem and who'll tell the story? Will the line hold? Will it scatter and run? Shall we at last be united in glory? Only remembered for what we have done. Only remembered, only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. Shall we at last be united in glory? Only remembered for what we have done.
Only remembered,
Only remembered, only remembered for what we have done. Shall we at last be united in glory? Only remembered for what we have done.
You'll see at the back of the stage the Ellington NUM banner. It's been displayed at every one of our concerts. It was created by one of the famed Pitman painters of Ashington, and it attends the Northumberland Miners' Picnic and the Durham Big Meeting. The art and culture reflects real life. Some of that story lies in the work of historians and academics. Dr. Wynne Stokes is one of the core members and friend. She studies and writes about social history, and we welcome her tonight to deliver a presentation for our consideration. Wynne Stokes.
Now, I wrote this piece some years back, and it's actually appeared in print, believe it or not. But it was because I got annoyed, and I showed it to a friend of mine, and he said, well, that's a rant. I said, well, yes, but I think it's a justified rant. So I leave you to judge. It's called If Only. Now, I think all here know the story of the Hartley disaster. And to those who, like Queen Victoria, only read about it in the national press, what happened must have seemed just a dreadful accident. There are very few things that happen that are total accidents. And those in the northeast who knew something about mining actually realised that there was more to it than just a dreadful calamity that couldn't have possibly been foreseen. Well, maybe it couldn't have been foreseen, but it could have been prevented. And that was what made me annoyed. So I call this If Only. If only some things had been done that should have been done a long time before, and even quite shortly before the calamity, then it might not have happened, or if it had happened, it wouldn't have been such a calamity as it was. If only, and we've already heard this, if only there had been more than one shaft, something that mining safety experts had been campaigning for at least the past 20 years before 1862. But sinking a full extra shaft cost a lot of money. And coal owners and lessees were interested in profits. I won't say they weren't interested in safety, but profit came first. So if only, basically, there had been more than one shaft. If only the coal owners' lobby hadn't been so strong in Parliament, then perhaps legislation would have been passed which would have safeguarded those who toiled in the mines. The coal owners' lobby in Parliament was very strong indeed, and so they only passed the minimum of legislation that would ensure the safety of their profits. As I say, it's a bit of a rant. Even without two shafts, if only there had been access from one seam to another, then to the surface, the miners who were trapped in the shaft could have got out, but they couldn't. The structure of the mine, in very simplistic terms, was like a three-layered cake. A bottom seam, a middle seam, and a top seam, and then access to the outer world. Now, the bottom seam had been subject to flooding. That was why there was a pumping contraption there in the first place. But the flooding had been largely alleviated by altering the drainage. Nevertheless, this massive beam engine continued to pump, and the concern of the miners was expressed to the then Inspector of Mines based on the idea that it could flood again. So they said to him, well, why can't we have a sort of vent that we can actually get from the lowest level where the flooding was likely to take place to the next level? And that was done. He suggested at the time to the mine owners that they might actually put one from the second level to the top level. But that would have cost money. That would have cost £300. If only they'd spent that £300, then the trapped miners would have been able to get up to the top. But they didn't. If only they had. So the colliery owners were rather strapped for cash. This is not just a simple excuse, because the money that they'd used for the pumping engine, they'd have to borrow from the bank. And the bank that they borrowed it from had gone bust in 1857. So they were strapped for cash. One of the newspaper reports said that they operated their collieries on ecumenical economical lines, not ecumenical thought, something different. Economical lines, and this was true. And also they didn't supervise their management as well as they should have done. There'd been an explosion at Burradon shortly before, 2 years before, and 72 men were killed. And it was, at the inquest, it was said to be due to poor management. So they didn't have a very good track record anyway. So if only they had taken more care, more supervision, better management, the story might have been different. If only they'd listened to the inspector and actually put that other vent in so that the men could get out, then they wouldn't have been entombed. So when I say if only, it's really a series of things that weren't done that should have been done. And if they had been done, okay, the beam may have fallen down the shaft just as it did. But if there had been two shafts, that wouldn't have been the end of the world. If the beam had fallen down the shaft and there had been access to the various levels, the various seams, then the men could have got out. If only these things had been done, then it would have been a bad day, but it wouldn't have been half as bad as it turned out. And that was the reason that I got so annoyed, and why I thought, if only they'd just done what they should have done, then it wouldn't have happened. Or if it happened, it wouldn't have been the disaster for these people, for these families, and these men and boys that it was. Now, the interesting thing is that once it had happened, suddenly Parliament decided, under pressure from public opinion, Parliament accepted a petition from the northeastern miners that there should be legislation that every colliery should have two shafts. But it was a bit too late for the 204 men and boys who died at New Hartley.